So you found the skeleton. How would you tell people that it's you personally? How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Matt with Maddie. I am here, of course, with Maddie. Maddie, how you doing?
I am doing so good. The question before stream team was this beer, Rough Tail Brewing Company's Everything Rhymes with Orange IPA, which is like in Oklahoma, it is ubiquitous. It's on tap everywhere. I didn't know if that was an Oklahoma thing or not. It is. They're based out of Oklahoma City, so I get to continue my trend of supporting Oklahoma breweries for this stream.
Well,
that's the happiest I'm going to be tonight, Dapper.
I am drinking some imported lychee-flavored soju from South Korea.
Delicious.
Because I really like soju. And also it makes me nostalgic for those times I was in South Korea. So, you know.
I have never been to South Korea. I would like to visit.
I've been at least twice. I'm trying to remember if I've actually been 3 times.
I know my sister spent a while there, but that was, she spent like a full 30 days on an op with her Marines when she was their doctor, living in a tent in a field in South Korea. So I don't know how she feels about South Korea.
Yeah, that sounds less fun than hanging out in Seoul or Busan and just, you know, doing touristy stuff.
Yeah, there was a sweet woman who like set up a tent where she made noodle soup, and you could buy noodle soup if you didn't want to, you know, eat MREs. And she like was so concerned about my sister. She like checked on her, made sure she got noodles. She was very concerned,
nice.
Which I think is really sweet. Also, my sister, you can't do this anymore, but when she was in, she got the Korean War medal that you could still get until like 3 years ago. If you, it has a sparkly dragon on it, Dapper.
Well, that is nice.
I don't know why I wasn't allowed to earn a sparkly dragon medal.
Did you go to South Korea?
No.
Well, that's why.
But I want one.
Well, you should have gone to South Korea.
Well,
Rochina, Rochina Auto Catalytic Killer says, "Is this the Air in Space one for $1.99?" So this is not the Air in Space video, but this is the guy who thinks that there is air in space.
There's air in space.
Because
that's different.
We are here to talk about Matt Powell. We've changed Matts.
Yes.
So there's good news and bad news with this one, Maddie. The good news is we're done with Raw Matt for now.
Yeah,
the bad news is I have created out of 2 smallish videos, 1 hour and 5 minute and 30-second video about Matt.
No.
Yeah. So
by the way, I checked out his channel recently because I wanted just to see what he was posting. And it's like bad prank show.
Yeah, I don't know why he's doing that, but yeah, he's decided to start doing prank content, which is just the weirdest.
Still Jesus content too. So it's like pranks and preaching.
Yeah.
And like that doesn't go
You got
together.
pranked. Believe in Jesus.
Believe in Jesus.
Okay, I don't sure. But this particular video is actually an appearance of his from like 6 years ago. Part of the problem is that it's really hard to get new stuff from him that actually has him talking about like creation and science and such. And the most recent thing that he did has already been very thoroughly covered by Vice Rhino, so I didn't want to grab that video because that felt kind of redundant. Fair. So I grabbed a couple videos from this one is from 6 years ago. The next one that we're not going to get to tonight, but that does exist on this video, is from 4 years ago. So, this is sort of baby Matt. You know.
Yeah, so baby Matt. This is long enough ago that I like still had hope for him. I was like, maybe you'll like learn some stuff and get out of the cult you're in. But instead, he doubled down.
Yep.
He doubled down. He said, no, I like it here in the cult. I'm going to go to more of it. I want more of that in my life. Cults. So
while I was looking for these, I did listen to a big chunk of a sermon he ended up giving in which he was complaining about some other church's ecclesiology, while himself just importing his own ecclesiology and slapping it onto the texts in Acts. And I was just like, wow, that's pretty fancy there. All
right, I'm pre-gaming a drink.
Yeah, my favorite was when he said that the words pastor, elder, bishop were all used interchangeably in the New Testament. I'm like, I would love to see a citation for that, because
citation needed. That doesn't sound true.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone make that claim in any plausible manner.
No.
But it would be convenient for him if it were true, because then it would mean that the ecclesiology of the New Testament is roughly the same as his rather simplistic ecclesiology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was fun. Anyway, we're not responding to that one because no one wants to hear me talk about ecclesiology.
No.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about science.
Right, exactly.
Because fundamentally, we don't really care about your ecclesiology. We don't really care about your theology. That shouldn't matter when we talk about science, because science doesn't care about your answer to the question, is there a God? Right?
Yeah. Look, if you think that presbyteros and episkopos are the same word, I don't really care in terms of science. Now, if you want to get into a discussion about etymology and semantics in Greek, we might have a discussion for that. But yeah, when it comes to science, it doesn't matter. So, now, for those of you who don't know, like I said, I'm drinking some soju and Maddie's drinking some beer. That is because we do this as a bit of a drinking game. We have a whole bunch of rules for the drinking game, but before we go over the rules, I want to first say, if you want to participate and you don't want to drink alcohol, that is perfectly fine. You can participate with water, juice, soda, tea, coffee, vape pens, high-fiving the person sitting next to you. I don't really care. This
M&Ms.
M&Ms, chips, whatever you want, right? That being said, if you do decide to participate with any kind of intoxicating substance, please be careful, know your limits, pace yourself, and don't, after this, go out and drive a car, operate heavy machinery, fly an airplane, text your ex. None of those are good ideas. Don't do them. Now, that being said, C Design Proponentist says, Pastor, Elder, and Bishop are actually the same word in Proto-Yiddish. They changed that in the Greek translation.
Excellent callback.
Oh,
excellent callback.
Yes.
I appreciate you.
Oh, yes. Oh, my
By the way,
goodness.
my fidget project for tonight is that I'm knitting chainmail.
Nice. Which I believe is not historically how chainmail is made, but then again, I'm not a chainmail historian.
Define historically for the movie Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail, which was made in the past. All their chainmail costumes were knitted.
I mean, by historically in this case, I mean when chainmail was being used to protect people from wounds in combat.
True. Yeah, this does not give you +2 to your AC.
No.
But it's going to look really cool.
Roachna Auto Catalytic Killer for $1.99 says, AIG is a bag of old mats.
Cheers!
We'll take a drink for that.
Hey guys, that's one of our drink triggers. Anytime anyone super chats something to the effect of AIG is a bag of dicks, we're going to take a drink. Bonus points from me. You get a little gold star sticker from me. Ethereally? Sure. If it is, what's the word? When all the words start with the same letter.
Alliterated.
If it's alliterative. Thank you.
There you go. Savage Dreadnought Armored Schooner Cobra for $4.99 says, it's amazing how often religious texts agree with the theology of the people such theology benefits. Well, it is amazing, but usually only when they're the ones who get to be in charge of telling you what it says. When you actually get scholars in whatever language, you find it often actually doesn't say what they want it to say. But, you know. Alright, so, we already heard one of our drink triggers. Now, if Matt says something that's just too stupid, that we have to take a drink, we're going to take a drink. And yes, with either of the mats, that is extremely dangerous. But
it is. So, such as the air in space, or the sun being on fire.
Right. Yeah, the sun needs oxygen because it's literally on fire. Something that is, that's a belief he holds in common with J.M. Truth, the flat earther.
Aww, they can be friends.
Well, they'll disagree about whether or not to be quote-unquote Torah observant. Because JM is, for whatever it means to him, quote-unquote, Torah observant, which seems to mostly mean that he doesn't shower and doesn't eat pork.
That doesn't sound right. Okay.
Well, I mean, where does it say to take a shower in the Torah?
I mean, it doesn't say to take a shower, but bathing is discussed frequently.
Yeah, well, I'm sure next time he's going to step into the temple, he'll take a little ritual bath to make sure he's clean. But, anyway, we will also take a drink if Matt Powell says anything that is just factually accurate and he's not simply quoting. Right? He has to actually know this thing, and he has to say it himself.
He has to have a thought that goes from his brain to his mouth, turns into words that are spoken, that is factual.
Correct.
We will take a drink for that.
We'll also take a drink anytime he tells a story that didn't happen or tells a joke that didn't land. We'll also take a drink anytime he mentions that German political party from the 1930s and 40s that, started a bit of trouble over in Europe, as you might say.
Yeah. And for Matt Powell, we toss into this category school shootings.
Well, most specifically Columbine, but yeah.
More specifically Columbine.
Yeah, because he likes to bring that up all the time.
Likes to bring that up a lot.
Yeah. Russian Autocatalytic Killer for $4.99 says, Matt has said he was in the Hebrew Roots movement before. Yeah, he said that. I don't know that I believe him. He did do a sermon about the Hebrew Roots movement, which was significantly less anti-Semitic than I was expecting. Wasn't not anti-Semitic, don't get me wrong, but it was less than I was expecting. I mean, I was expecting it to just be absolutely horrific from beginning to end, and I can't go that far. Savage Dreadnought Armored Schooner Cobra for $4.99 says, The Torah, a text famous for the lack of ritual washing. Look,
yes,
I want to be fair. My joke about JM Truth not taking showers is based entirely off of the fact that he appears scruffy, and I don't actually have any inside information on how much he showers. So, JM, if you're watching, I don't actually know you. For all I know, you shower twice a day. You don't look like you shower twice a day, but I don't know. So, sorry. It was funny, though. Okay, so we will also take a drink if Raw Matt cites a source, which, I mean, it's Raw Matt. Or not Raw Matt, sorry, Matt Powell. If Matt Powell cites a source, and we go and check that source, and not only does it not support his contention, but if it actively contradicts him and says that he's actively wrong, we'll take a drink for that. That's called a Trojan source. We'll also take a drink anytime Raw Matt tries to use what we can know from AL288-1, that's Lucy, the Australopithecus afarensis. And he broadens that to any larger taxon to which she belongs. So if he's like, well, we don't know if Australopithecus could walk upright because we don't have Lucy's feet. Hey, guess what? We've got lots of foot bones from other Australopithecus, including Australopithecus afarensis. So it doesn't matter if we have Lucy in particular with feet. Or if he's like, well, we don't know if she really had this S-shaped curve to her spine. And then I say, well, Mrs. Ples has an almost complete spine, and she has lumbar lordosis. So it doesn't matter if we have a complete spine for Lucy. Also, of course, you can tell if there's lumbar lordosis from the shape and angle of the articular surface of the sacrum, which we do have, so it doesn't really matter, but yeah, anyway. My money meter is tiny. Well, so here's the thing with that, right? I'm trying to put it into a nice place in this where this part is still visible. Bent gets free pizza, in case he gets free pizza. Although, unfortunately, if Bent gets free pizza today, he probably won't actually be eating the pizza today. Because Bent is not well. He's been spending a lot of time not eating things because everything he eats ends up coming out the wrong way.
I'm sorry.
So, Bent is under the weather. I might end up needing to bring him to the doctors because he certainly can't drive himself to the doctor in this condition. So, I might make him sit in the back, though, because I don't want whatever the heck he has.
Fair.
Yeah. I'd be like, here, wear a mask in the back seat.
Mask in the back seat. Towels. Towels everywhere are a good trick if you're, in my case, kiddo isn't old enough to aim into a bucket.
Well, I think we're just going to take a bucket because Bent is not a toddler.
Is old enough.
Yeah, he's not a toddler.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's true. But sometimes you're so sick you can't aim. That does.
I'll just have him sit with the bucket, like literally clutching it to his chest.
Yeah.
So that way, that's the only place he can bother it. See Design Proponents this for 200 Argentinian pesos says, second time I'm actually playing along This is with yerba mate. Oh, wait. Yerba mate is
Nice.
apparently how it's supposed to be pronounced. Fair enough. Sherba mate? Hey, if you say so. That's not how I would ever pronounce that word, just based on how it's spelled, but I guess it's yerba mate. So I won't sleep tonight.
Cool.
Well, good luck with the not sleeping. All right, so we'll also take a drink if either Maddie or I can predict what Matt Powell is going to bring up. As we said, we already went over the AIG's bag of dicks. Also, if there are gifted memberships, we will take a drink for each gifted membership.
We
Also,
sure
if,
will.
If anyone super chats or membership milestone chats, anything that includes any of the kaiju emojis, we'll take a drink. That includes Mothra, Godzilla, and King Ghidorah. And also, they might come by audibly. Maybe not. They usually don't. But if they do, we'll take a drink for it. I think that covers everything. If it doesn't cover everything, then I'll just remember it at the time. Oh, yeah. Dapper's a professional. If I screw up the production...
Dapper's a professional.
If I screw up the production...
Hey, I'm going to take a drink for Dapper's a professional.
Why?
Because you forgot it as a drinking rule.
I don't think that's how that works, but you know what? This soju is good, so I'll take it.
It's so good, right? Like,
yeah.
Listen, I know I can just take a sip of my beer external from a drinking trigger.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I don't want to. It feels like cheating somehow.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Roshna Auto Catalytic Killer for $4.99 says, lumbar lordosis sounds like something a chiropractor would charge you 3 sessions a week for a year to fix. Well, if anyone offers to fix your lumbar lordosis, you should not go see that person. You need that.
Go see that person.
Hank says, for a $666 redo, says, this is for Bent's ginger ale / ginseng tea medical foliage budget.
Oh.
Get well soon. Thank you very much. I will make sure that he gets some... I don't think he actually likes ginseng tea, but I think he does like ginger beer. So I'll try to give him some ginger beer. Asta answers in my posterior review who's been a member for 17 months and is at the amulet level, says, Argentine moment. It's actually Argentina just fronts that. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like sure. Yeah, okay. Thank you. That makes sense. I don't know that much about like the dialectal differences between Argentine and other Spanish dialects. So, you know, the Spanish dialect with which I'm most familiar is Mexican Spanish, because I live in Arizona. So obviously, it's the only one I hear most of the time.
I had to explain what plantain chips were to my cashier at Walmart, and that conversation was like uncomfortably touching racism, right?
Ooh.
Like, I'm uncomfy.
I actually just made some plantain chips a few days ago.
Walmart had a giant tub, like this big, full of plantain chips.
Oh man! All right.
I'm
well,
so excited.
Unfortunately, though, here's Matt. Now,
I'm not excited now.
This is going to start abruptly. It's also going to end abruptly when we get there, and the next one is going to start abruptly because Matt doesn't know how to edit videos.
So it'll be a normal Matt Powell experience. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Matt Powell. I'm a college student. I'm also a preacher. I enjoy preaching. And Matthias, thank you so much for having me on.
I think that was technically correct. He does enjoy preaching. We'll take a drink.
I'll take a drink. Yeah.
So just a little bit about myself. I'm a senior in college this year.
Remember, this year is 6 years ago. So in case anyone is wondering, as far as I know, Matt Powell is no longer in college. Although what college he was going to is something I would love to know because I can't imagine it's a real college.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in Michigan.
Studying computer science and a business degree as well, and computer information systems. And
afterwards, he moved to Dinosaur Adventureland to, use those degrees.
With his wife and young child.
Yeah, he has since left, which is good because...
Good, okay.
Yeah. I don't really care about Raw Matt, but especially his kid didn't do anything. And
right, I was really worried about his kid.
Given his position on things like gender politics, it's also entirely possible that this was against his wife's will. Also,
yeah.
So, Renee Reptile Egg Crumble for $5 says ginger beer is best quote beer, and AIG is what some harvesters in the marginalia of manuscripts pick off of trees. I love the dick tree illustration.
Cheers.
I'll take a drink for that. Have you seen the dick tree?
I have.
It's
I love the dick trees.
it
I
is-
also
it is
love
iconic.
cats with upsettingly human faces.
Yes, that is another great trope from medieval art. It's just like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what a cat looks like, right? Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well,
Totally.
do you though? Because that just looks like a dude with a cat body. Okay.
Okay.
There's another one that I loved. It was like, say you know how to draw a horse, right? And the thing is, it's actually like a Russian. It's like a Russian icon. And here's a hint about Russian Christian art. They don't know how to draw horses.
They don't.
They don't. They really don't. It's weird. To be
there
fair,
was one I saw that was you know how to draw a horse, right? And they drew one, I think, like in profile or in straight on, right, correctly, and then to the side it was like a child's scribble.
Yeah. Goodness. Although I will say there is the religious iconography from Russia that's more from like the 17th, 18th, and 19th century, where they were doing a more realistic style. And in those, they actually do know how to draw horses. So
that's good.
Yeah. For some reason, like Russian iconography had like its like hyper realist phase, which was just a thing that happened, and it's just like, okay, that's interesting, but
yeah,
okay.
You know, I love logic, I love science, and so forth. And
just take a drink. I love logic and
science. There's a lot of lies in our textbooks, and a lot of people accuse me of
Matt. Okay, when you say you love science, you're the guy who thinks that there's air in space so that the sun can burn because it needs oxygen.
So I genuinely don't know what you mean when you say, I don't know what you love. When you say I love science and that, like, and have such, like, lack of knowledge, right?
Like,
I find it
basic,
I don't know
like,
what to do with that.
5th grade level understanding of science kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's... I don't know what to do. It's like
I'm not gonna lie, like, my kiddo has a book that is astrophysics for babies, right? And that explains the concept of fusion and how stars work, right? So like, homeboy doesn't have astrophysics for babies.
Exactly. Yeah, and also he said that T-Rex's arms became legs and then grew wing, and then the T-Rex grew wings, and that's how we got chickens. Well, to be fair, he doesn't say he believes that. He thinks that's what the consensus view is in biology. And so, like, when you say, I love science, yeah, it's very confusing, because it's kind of like walking in to someone's house because they invited you over for barbecue, and what they're actually doing is steaming tofu. And it's like, look, steamed tofu is fine. I don't have a problem with steamed tofu, per se, but it's not what I was invited here for.
Yeah, it's like a category error. Right. You know, this is...
Clearly, we don't mean the same thing when we say these words.
Right. Like people in New England, when they say barbecue,
they mean hot dogs and hamburgers.
Mean hamburgers and hot dogs.
Yeah. Well, corn on the cob, too.
Sometimes.
Maybe a vegetable kebab.
Maybe.
That's it.
They don't mean barbecue.
Yeah, they don't mean brisket and ribs and stuff like that. They don't. Not that there's something wrong with, you know, hamburgers and hot dogs on a grill. That's a great way to cook both of those items, but it's not barbecue.
Yeah, those are delicious, but you promised me a barbecue.
Yeah, I want some slow-cooked ribs.
That is not what we are doing here, sir.
Being so biased against the truth, but here's the thing. Actually, they're biased. If you're an evolutionist, you're automatically biased.
Everyone is biased, Matt. The question is whether or not you let your bias overcome you. And whether or not you
Everyone's a little bit biased sometimes.
And also whether or not you have checks and balances in place so that when your bias is starting to interfere with your, you know, reasoning and your conclusions, someone else can come by and say, hey man, hold on. Have you considered? And then they point out things that you're biased about. And then, you know, you fix that.
Yeah.
My Infinite Journey for $10 says, reposting from Clifford, the Alpha and Omega Dog newsletters, Australopithechrist. Okay. Lucy died for our sins. Her hands and feet were missing because they were nailed to the cross. I feel like that might not be how it works, but what do I know? I wasn't there when Lucy died.
Yeah.
Also, one of her toes is there. We have a partial, like, her, like, right hallux. We got, like, 2 bones from it. So, how'd that get there, huh?
And people often just accuse just about every creationist, Ken Ham, Kent Hovind, Eric Hovind, they accuse all these men of being biased.
I mean, they demonstrably are.
They demonstrably are, but, like, biased is way too tame a word for what they are. Right?
I mean,
like, this is not, like, my pet theory, right, out of my dissertation, right? I'm a little biased to wanting that to be true, right? So, like, I think, you know, ocean waves play an equally important role to ocean heat transport in short timescale sea ice processes, right? That's a bias.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thinking you can ignore literally everything about science is a little bit more than just a bias.
Yeah, this is like saying that, like, sea ice is actually broken up by Yetis tap dancing, right? That's not a bias. That's
okay,
bonkers.
but have you followed all the Yetis to make sure they're not tap dancing on the ice?
I have not even found one Yeti.
Okay. Roshna Autocatalytic Keller for $4.99 says, it's like saying you love Mexican food and your only experience with Mexican food is Mexican Week on the Great British Bake Off. Oh no.
Oh, Mexican Week on the Great British Bake Off was so painful.
It was a tragedy. Like, some of the things that they concocted, I was like, I can see how that might be, like, a barely palatable thing to eat, but to call it Mexican food should just be a crime.
Oof, yes. They know.
Dutch Tunicate Demonic Selection for $2 says, my favorite medieval art is of animals doing jobs. Yeah, like, there's a cat churning butter, and there's, like, a dog just, like, you know, scything the wheat field or something. It's just like, yeah, you know, you're just doing a regular old human job.
Kitty cat careers. Kitty cat careers.
Theory, clowns are people.
Improv warm up.
Okay.
There we go. Found it.
Theory, clowns are people. Quoting Dr. Tapioca Weasel, Rana, who's been a member for 14 months and was at the Tetrapod level, sends a blank membership chat. So thank you. I appreciate it.
What's up?
Asta answers in my posterior review for $4.99 says, Patrick Starvoice, this is not your ordinary bias. This is advanced bias. I do appreciate that.
Sure is.
Although I am pretty sure that my Patrick Star impression was absolutely atrocious because it's been a while. All right, here we go.
But the truth is that they're actually the biased ones. These people, that's what the Bible
Oh, Australopithecus was part of the message, not the username. Oops.
says that he that accuseth you of these things is guilty of the same things. So literally the word of God just gets it right straight off the bat. And people are like,
okay, Matt, no. your response is, nuh-uh, you.
You.
I'm taking a drink for that.
You.
Jeez. Oh, man. It's not even like
I know you are, but what am I?
Not even a full 2 quote way. It's just nuh-uh, you. It's like, okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's no bias. What bias are you talking about? Well, obviously, Ernest Haeckel, one of the most popular.
Matt, could you go for someone who's a little, you know, more current? I don't know.
Yeah.
Instead of someone who you're about to accuse of fraud, but who was never actually tried for fraud, and who was. It turns out even the people who originally accused him of fraud have backed off of those accusations. Hey, to
also, let's be really clear. They accused him of academic fraud, which, while bad, is not a crime.
Not a criminal fraud, yeah. And in fact, if there had been a trial, it would have been a university trial.
Yeah.
Or, like...
And those aren't trials. That's different.
They're trials in the sense that there's someone who's going to sit in judgment, and people are going to come forth with evidence and present it, and that you're going to have a chance to defend yourself, but, like, the outcome of that is going to be, like, professional disciplinary action, not like off to prison with you, not even off to pay a fine, just like you might get fired maybe.
That's like saying that like HR made me watch a training video, right? Like your meeting with HR is a trial. You know, it's like it's the same concept.
Yeah,
right?
Basically.
Fate
to Grey No True Dinoman for $5 says, searching stars, Sages sadly saw signs showing strangely slippery sausage satchel signifying AIG. Very nice. We'll take a drink for that.
Yay, I like it.
Savage Dreadnought Armored Schooner Cobra for $4.99 says, You mean that medieval cats have done more honest day's work than Kent Hovind? Modern cats have done more honest day's work than Kent Hovind has.
Yeah.
Never mind medieval cats. If you have a cat and your house gets a mouse problem, it won't have one for long because your cat is going to put in some honest hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Because cats are still really good mousers, which is why you shouldn't leave them outside because they are absolute murder hobos.
Mm-hmm.
One day, like if you have a cat, you can find numerous videos on YouTube of someone who's just like, I'm just going to attach like a little camera to my cat when it goes outside and just see what happens. And what happens is like, oh, it killed 30 birds and 20 mice. Okay.
Oh.
And then
it murdered.
Yeah, I just did a whole lot of murder. Okay. Thanks, kitty.
Teachers of evolution of all time stated and this is his own
one of the greatest teachers of evolution of all time.
Teachers of evolution of all time.
The guy whose distinctive ideas have been dismissed as incorrect. The greatest teacher of evolution of all time.
Yeah. Well, and like, we're not saying that Hegel wasn't like a good scientist in his time.
Well, he wasn't.
Right?
He wasn't even a scientist. He was a science communicator. He was the Bill Nye of the 19th century.
Okay. Yeah.
So like, it's one of those like, it's like you're trying to attack like modern physics by saying like, hey, did you know that on Bill Nye the Science Guy, they got the equation for like relativistic time dilation wrong? It's like, okay, now what do I do with that? It's like, therefore, see, general relativity, fake.
Yeah, like that's not.
No, not how that works.
And also, this idea, like, the important thing to remember when we're dealing with, like, young Earth creationists is they have this perspective, right? The way they view the world is that information comes from on high, from men in positions of authority, right?
Yes.
And so what this person says is true because that person said it, right? And so what Matt is doing here, right? And I mean, we all know what he's doing, but let's just say it out loud, right? What he's doing is attempting to discredit who he perceives to be a prophet of science, right? A prophet of evolution, right? And if you can demonstrate a prophet to be false, right, then their prophecy must be false. Yeah. Right? Like, that's the mindset. It's silly. It doesn't apply to science. But it took me years of listening to these chuckleheads, censored myself, you can guess at what I wanted to say, to understand that that's what they were doing. That they were, like, looking for the person from whom we get all of our knowledge, or our holy book. Right?
The thing is,
like, they're looking for that.
If you approach it as if they're actually talking about science, the way that scientists conceptualize science, their attacks on people like Ernst Haeckel and Darwin make literally no sense.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. Naramdaputz, who's been a member for 11 months, says, "Let us pray. O Darwin, who art in the British Museum," and ... I don't think I actually have that video handy, but it is a good one. If you haven't seen my short of the Darwin prayer, go check that out on my shorts page.
Yeah, do it.
Well, not right now. Wait till after the show. Obvious.
Right. Yeah. We're having too much fun. So
spontaneous generation must be true, not because it had been proven in a laboratory, but because otherwise it would be necessary to believe in a creator. So he's saying, look, spontaneous generation must be true, otherwise I'd have to believe in God.
Okay, so let's take a drink.
Yeah. Spontaneous generation was Louis Pasteur's thing, and what spontaneous generation was.
he disconfirmed.
That's the thing he disproved.
So spontaneous generation is a vitalistic idea about the origin of complex life. It says that the difference between living and non-living matter is that living matter contains a vital essence or a vital energy, and that when things die, they can no longer contain their vital energy, and so it leaks out, and that excess vital energy in the environment will turn into new living things by rearranging the matter into new organisms. So, for instance, if you had a bunch of, say, dirty rags. Well, those rags came from plants, and if you just let them sit in a pile, then that vital energy from the plants will start to leak out, and mice will form. And so that's why, if you have a pile of dirty rags, and you disturb it, sometimes mice shoot out of there. And when you open up the rags to look, there will be little holes in it. That's the hole that was left by the mouse, obviously.
Yep.
If you leave out meat, it will spontaneously generate maggots. If you leave out bread, mold will simply appear. So what Louis Pasteur did was say, okay, if this is true, then it shouldn't matter whether or not any of these substances have access to the rest of the environment. Because if the life is being generated out of these substances, then it should all just generate either way. So his most famous experiments were, one, he took some broth that he boiled, probably a bone broth, but I don't actually know. It was just a common broth at the time. And so he was expecting it to grow cloudy and moldy if spontaneous generation were true. So he boiled it to keep it sterile, and then he put it in a sterilized swan-necked flask so that things from the outside air couldn't get in. But if anything was being generated inside the broth, it would simply be generated. And he boiled it because he knew from previous experiments that boiling helped keep things sanitary. So, did anything grow in the broth? No. He also did a similar experiment where he took some fresh meat and he placed it in a jar with cheesecloth over it, which meant that flies couldn't get in it to lay eggs. And it didn't develop maggots, although it did go bad, obviously, right? Because bacteria are still going to get through that cheesecloth. But didn't generate.
This is even like before germ theory of disease, right? Like,
yeah,
the concept of microscopic organisms.
Yeah, he didn't know
a long ways from that.
He didn't know why, like mold or things would grow on things like broth or anything like that, or why bacteria would get in. He just knew that if it was something external, he could block external things, whatever they happen to be. Joshua Geese just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. Let's take... Well, first, let's add that to the memberships. And take 5 drinks.
Took my first drink.
It's okay. 1. 2. 3. 4. And 5. Star Song for $5 says, here's for the Get Well fund. Also, I'm getting interrupted by ads. Yeah, so I do want to address that. I did turn on what YouTube is assuring me is a low level of ads for people who are not currently on, like, whatever the paid thing for YouTube is. And the reason I did that was, frankly, because, well, I'm expecting to have to spend a fair bit of money coming up here on things, and kind of need the money. So if it becomes horribly disruptive, and a number of people tell me that that's what's going on, I will see what I can do about lowering that threshold. Unfortunately, I need money. I'm going to need more money than before coming up here in probably the next year or so. I'm sorry. Sorry, Maddie, what were you going to say?
What I was going to say is we can look back at Ernest Haeckel and some of his theories and like the ideas he was wrestling with, and with our modern knowledge, right? Be like, ha ha ha, isn't that silly? Wasn't he dumb, right? Except like, oh my goodness, he didn't have a textbook in 5th grade that showed the life cycle of a fly, right?
Nope.
Because someone had to sit and watch a lot of flies go through their whole life cycle and then draw that diagram, right? And so like and trying to get an appreciation for what people of the past like had to figure out, and to some degree how clever they had to be to figure that stuff out for the first time, knowledge we take for granted. I do find that kind of interesting, right? I'm currently fully fascinated by Babylonian trigonometry, right?
With good reason.
With good reason. It's cool. And like, but I don't want to like switch to their system, you know, because I have like modern tools that are very useful, right? I'm not going to stop using my calculator. But like from a historical and just like, oh, how did they figure that out puzzle kind of sense, right? I think it's really interesting to think about. But what Matt here is trying to do is be like, see, he thought X, and therefore their prophet is wrong, right? Because if someone were able to come out today, right, and definitively prove that, like, there was no Jesus of Nazareth, right, that, you know what I mean, then his religious views would be, like, his whole worldview would be completely shaken. And so he thinks that that's the same way to attack a scientific point of view or a scientific, to attack scientific knowledge, right, is to attack who he views as its founder and prophet.
Yeah.
And like that someone in the past has like authority, right, because it was old, you know, like because to some degree, like, I mean, I don't know if he puts any stock into like early church fathers' writings, right?
I doubt it.
I doubt it. So, anyway, but like, because to some degree, right, like the Bible is good because it's old and we can't question it because it's old, right? Like,
I mean, yeah. But now, real quick, I do have to say that when last I checked, we had 66 likes, and however, we had 134 people watching, which means, unfortunately, I have to say I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve, so hit that like button so you don't have to keep getting Bilboed. Also, Roshna Autocatalytic Keller for $1.99 says, Maddie, always raising her int level. It's true. Alright, we're gonna hit...
listen, if I was... Let's be real, guys. If I was thrown into Faerun tomorrow, I would be a wizard. Maddie, my class is wizard. I'm making a chainmail shirt to play my dwarf Tempest Domain Cleric.
See, the fact that you're making a chainmail shirt, though, makes me think maybe Artificer.
I could be an Artificer. That's true. I could do Artificer. Because Artificer is an int-based class, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. You played one?
Yeah, but that was a while ago, and it was the only time I've ever done it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I can do Artificer.
Spontaneous generation was debunked years and years ago, and yet people are still trying to resurrect it and believe it because they don't want to believe in a god.
No one is trying to do that, Matt. Let's take a drink.
He's conflating abiogenesis and spontaneous generation.
Abiogenesis is a purely mechanistic and chemical process. It does not involve any kind of special vital energy. It does not involve modern complex organisms arising out of organic matter spontaneously. It doesn't do any of those things. Yeah. It is not the same idea. The only connection between them are that both are ideas about life coming from things that were not themselves alive. And that is a real similarity. But yeah, other than that, they're completely different.
But like both Smurfs and blueberries are blue, but you should probably only eat one of them. Right? That doesn't mean they're the same thing.
Savage Dreadnought Armored Schooner Cobra says he probably thinks Papias was a Baptist. Oh no.
He probably does. It's the thing.
Yeah.
He thinks Paul was a Baptist.
You're probably right. You know, I have a book that has
I am right
all of our...
Sorry, I am right because that's a real doctrine in any fundamentalist Baptist denomination.
That is depressing.
Baptists are the one true Christians. Paul was a true Christian, therefore Paul was a Baptist.
Yeah, I mean, the logic of that, if you accept the premises, does seem to follow. I hate it, though. It's so dumb.
I hate it. It's very dumb.
Savage Dreadnought Armored Schooner Cobra for $1.99 says, scratch that. He's never heard of Papias. That's actually the more likely thing right there. Actually, so I have a copy of the Apostolic Fathers, and one of the last sections in it is just titled Fragments of Papias, and it's got so many different languages in there. It's got like Georgian, it's got Arabic, it's got Syriac, it's got Greek, it's got Latin, and it's just like the whole rest of the book, right? The entire rest of the book is in like Greek with a couple things in Latin. And then suddenly here comes Fragments of Papias, and it's just like, hey, there's like 11 languages in here, and like 5 different alphabets. So good luck. Like, oh, okay.
Did it make your little linguist brain happy?
Yes and no, because some of them I didn't even try. Like, I can't read Aramaic. I'm not even going to try. I also don't know a word of Georgian. I'm not going to try. So, but it was nice to see. You know, it's a nice variety of scripts. Wayne Rossi from 499 says, I think there's also a factor where it's just easier for these young Earth creationists to memorize, quote, debunks for evolution than understanding it with a Godzilla. Yeah, no, I definitely think that's true. We'll take a drink for the Godzilla.
Because this type of Christianity highly values memorization.
True, memorize those Bible verses.
And lauds memorization as knowledge, right? And like it values memorization significantly more than it values critical thinking, right? Because the kid that memorizes the most Bible verses gets an Xbox at the end of the summer. That's a real thing. The kid that asks a critical question is probably out of the church at this point, right? Like
DM Jurassic Park was a documentary wing. It says, also not denying he's a linguist. Look, do I have to deny it every single time it comes up? I am not now, nor have I ever been associated with any linguistic society, nor have I ever been a linguist.
I will like to defend that, right? Like, I am not a working mathematician right now. I'm a working meteorologist or working scientist. Yeah. But I will say, oh, that makes my math brain happy, right?
That's the thing. It's that there's a difference. Also, Roshana Autocatalytic Color for 199 says, here's a cubic meter of antimatter osmium. I would rather not receive a cubic meter of antimatter osmium. That sounds dangerous. Please keep that to yourself, far, far away from me. All right, here we go.
And I love what the Bible says about, God said, Jesus said while he was on this earth, he said, he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest thereof in God. But he said, he that, hates God hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved, or that means discovered.
Matt, you can't use that to just say, I disagree with this person, therefore he's not coming from the light and he's actually full of Satan. Like, that is a step too far, right? You would need a whole lot more evidence to say, therefore, Ernst Haeckel, who, by the way, again, doesn't really matter here in the year of our Lord 2024, you need to do a whole lot more to say he's actually full of Satan. Because he was wrong about embryology. Like,
right.
Like, if that's the standard that we're going for, anyone who's wrong about some obscure aspect of science is therefore from Satan, I guess some bad news for the author of Genesis, my guy.
Yeah. Oof. Also, man, you like how he tossed out that's not even New King James. That's straight up King James.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he's strictly King James only, but he's clearly, like, King James is best.
Well, I mean, like, Kent is King James only-est.
Well, yes and no, because the thing is, he does say that the King James is the only Bible worth reading, but he does also say that people can read and get saved out of other Bibles, and, like, if that's what you have, that's okay. But eventually, you should upgrade to the King James, which is a softer stance than some people have. So, like...
That's true.
We have a few super chats here. Answers in my posterior review for 499 says, you do not need to be a linguist to have a linguist brain. I mean, today's video guest isn't a theologian, but has theology brain. True. Savage Dreadnought Armor Schooner Cobra for 499 says, the true linguist denies his linguisticity. He's the linguist. This is not the life of Brian. Coop23 et al. For $2 says, he didn't deny being a linguist. I did now. I'm not a linguist. I should just go get a linguistics degree, I should say, so it shows you how much of a linguist I am. Tell you what, if you guys can fund tonight an entire undergrad degree program, I will go enroll and get a linguistics degree. It's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, most likely, but if you guys can do it tonight, I'll do it. Hollyhawk, who's been a member for 13 months, says, a KJV mostlyist. Yeah, that's actually pretty fair.
Yeah. That's
although,
right.
Ken Hovind claims to be a personal friend of Gail Riplinger, like the KJV only person. And like, I actually kind of want to know what those two talk about. Because Gail Riplinger is quite the personality. When it was once pointed out to her that in her book, what is it? New World Bible Translations or something is the title of her book, where she argues for King James only. Someone pointed out that she put I don't remember exactly which version it was, but she put whatever B standing for Bible in there, and she called it the Bible when she was writing out. And someone pointed out the actual title for this is version with a V. And her response was, well, God told me that he calls it what I call it in heaven. And I was like, oh, so your excuse for why you got the title of this Bible translation wrong is that you're claiming to be a prophetess, and God also uses your own mistake in heaven.
Yeah.
And that's why you did it.
Yeah. So, like, I don't make mistakes because anything that I write down, God told me to.
Right.
And so you can't tell me that I used the wrong your.
Yeah, because that's how God uses English in heaven. Different.
Yeah.
This is heavenly English. Probably don't know about it.
Yeah. Probably don't know about it. You're probably not as, like, spiritual as I am.
Exactly. Naranda puts for $5 says, for the degree, never tell me the odds. Thank you very much, Han Solo. All right, here we go.
And so some people just are automatically biased. So when people accuse us of being biased, look at their own scientists. You know, Ernest Haeckel is a prime example.
It's Ernst, but whatever.
And for him to say, well, spontaneous generation must be true, otherwise I'd have to believe in God. Well, spontaneous generation just happened to be disproved.
Star Song for $5 says, the KJV is mistranslated from the original Klingon. This is, of course, true.
This is, of course, true. Yeah, the Bible. If you're not reading the Bible in its original Klingon, like, oh my God, are you even a Christian?
Yeah, you're probably not, to be fair.
Probably not. You're probably not as, like, close with God as I am. It's just a shame for you.
You know, but it happens.
Yeah. I mean, I guess not everyone can be as good and great and spiritual as I am.
Okay.
This is my new character for stream.
Got it.
So and obviously it's a faith religion. Obviously he's accepting that by faith.
Okay, first, even if Ernst Haeckel, you know, we'll say Ernest Haeckel, even if Ernest, who, you know, Ernest goes to evolution, as Robert Adsit points out.
Definitely existed.
Yeah. So even if Ernest Haeckel, who definitely had adventures on his trip to evolution, had actually just accepted any of this on faith, that doesn't make it a religion, nor does it make modern evolutionary theory something that people believe on faith.
Yeah.
Todd Wood is a creationist, and he's right. There is, in fact, wide support for evolution, and it is a productive theory that produces results and suggests new areas of research, which themselves then produce results suggesting future research.
Yeah.
If you think otherwise, you're just wrong. Now, that doesn't mean you have to agree that evolution is true, right? There have been paradigms in the past that produced good results for a while and suggested new avenues of research, but that ultimately ended up not quite being right. So, hey, that's fine. But you can't just say that it's just made up and a religion. For another thing, one, religions don't have to come...
why do you think that's bad?
Yeah, there's that. There's that.
Why is Matt, in his worldview, why does he think, oh, it's just faith, it's just a religion? Why does he think that is a bad thing?
See, Maddie, he doesn't have a religion. He has a relationship. See? Christianity isn't a religion. It's a relationship with Jesus. Yeah, that's just a lie, but, you know.
Let me puke on your live, laugh, love pillow.
So, yeah, there's also the fact that look, here's the thing, right? Religion is not synonymous with things believed for bad reasons. Many things that are believed for bad reasons aren't religions, and there are many religions which don't require you to believe anything in particular, never mind for bad reasons. So you can't equate those things. Things that are believed for bad reasons don't have to be religious, although they can be, and religions don't have to be believed for bad reasons, although they can be, and often are, I would argue.
Okay.
Guptu at 3 et al. For $5 says, in my defense, my he didn't deny it message didn't come through until after you had denied it because there was a weird lag on my end. That's fair. That's fair. All right, here we go.
No worries. There's always a lag between chat and where we are talking.
Yeah, I think it's usually about 15 to 20 seconds.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Russian Autocatalytic Color for $4.99 says, the Four Humors was famous for its predictive power. I mean, people did make predictions based on it. It just, didn't work very well.
Well, like, it didn't work very well, but it, at the time, right? Like, we can crap on the Four Humors, right, all day long, right? But, like, and listen, I'm here for that. Like, I will crap on it with you. However, right, like,
yes.
Okay, so the question of, would a, say, physician at that time, working with their knowledge of the Four Humors and human anatomy, like working under that, and like trying to help someone who was sick, right? Would more people have died without any intervention versus with some intervention?
It actually depends on the period and what kinds of things the doctors were doing. There were, in fact, places where,
true.
Like, Hahnemann, the guy who invented homeopathy, his hospitals had a better outcome than most of the conventional hospitals at the time because he wasn't doing anything. And the actual hospitals were just giving people poison.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's an example, right? Plague doctor masks, right? Like, plague doctor masks did actually have some protective power. Not from the good smelling perfumey stuff they put in them like they thought, but because it was a mask and it put some degree of barrier between them and a bacterial infection.
Astra answers in my posterior review says, it's a relationship with Jesus. So you're parentheses, God sexual? Well, first, good pun. Second, I don't think most people who say that conceptualize that relationship as a sexual one, because there are other kinds of relationships out there.
That is true, but have you listened?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Have you listened to some Christian rock?
Look, there is a game you can play where you just listen to, like, the chorus of a Christian rock or worship song, and just a regular old generic, like, love song, and you try to pick which one's the love song and which one's the song about Jesus, and it's more or less impossible.
There's a whole South Park episode about that, and it's delightful.
It's delightful and accurate. It's a real thing. In fact, actually, I do believe at least one song started out as about Jesus, and then just shifted a few of the lyrics to just become a love song.
Nah, it's just a love song now.
Yeah.
Oh my
God.
Like,
yeah, it's... Look, there's a lot of great Christian music that's been written over the millennia.
Yeah.
Very little of it was written in the 20th century.
Agreed.
Savage Dreadnought Armored Schooner Cobra for $1.99 says, plague masks give +2 to toxic damage. Wait, isn't it +2 to toxic resistance? I feel like it should be resistance.
Probably.
Let's see. Potion Autocatalytic Keller for $1.99 says, come into me, Jesus. Yeah, look, it is very easy to turn a whole lot of that Protestant, like, new worship music into just weird innuendos about having sex with Jesus. And it's
not hard. It makes me a little uncomfy.
Yeah, it's weird and creepy, and I don't like it. I don't like it.
And he's saying, hey, this is more plausible than God. But in all reality, and before I turn this over to back to you, Matthias, I believe that atheism itself is a religion.
It's because you're extremely dumb, Matt.
Yes.
I'm taking a drink for that. Carrie Bronson.
And again, why do you think that is bad?
The most that I can think of is he knows that people generally are not, like, 'cause the thing is, even Matt, right, is generally skeptical of religious claims from other religions, right? By and large,
That's true.
Matt Powell, he rejects virtually all religious claims that he's ever heard.
That's true.
And so I think he wants to try to put science on an even playing field with his ideas about the world, when they're just not. And he's willing to throw the concept of religion under the rug if it gets him on that even playing field.
Okay.
Carrie Bronson, who's been a member for 39 months, says, if they really didn't want to conceptualize it that way, Jesus sculpted on the cross in Catholic schools would be less buff and handsome. So, to be fair, there is a theological reason why Jesus is usually portrayed as being quite muscular. And that is because Christian art typically depicts Jesus as, like, an idealized version of humanity, which means that he's generally going to be a picture of physical perfection. And that's also why most cultures tend to depict Jesus as being a member of, like, the local population. Why, when you look at, like, ancient Nestorian art of Jesus from China, because there were Nestorian Christians in China, like, 1,000 years ago, Jesus looks Chinese. It's why when he's depicted in Ethiopian icons, he looks Ethiopian. It's why when you look at him in, say, like, Russia or, like, Northern Europe, he looks like a white dude. It's because, traditionally, Jesus has been pictured not so much in any way that was considered to be a realistic depiction of the person himself, since we don't have any idea what he physically looked like, other than, where he lived and what his ancestry would have been. But instead, he's depicted as an idealized version of a human. And so that is why, especially after sort of like the Greco-Roman art style had a bit of a revival in Europe, that Catholic crucifixes tend to depict him with a very toned physique. It's because they're trying to portray him as the ideal human. Asta answers in my posterior review for 199 says, God is by definition implausible. Yeah, that does seem to be what he's saying.
Yeah.
All right.
And you have to accept it by faith. And a lot of people accuse me and accuse other people of saying, well, you're special pleading God. You're special pleading.
I mean, you demonstrably are in many cases. I don't know if it's the case necessarily in this case, but you often are, Matt Powell. Like, it's a thing you do.
I do find it wild that, like, I don't know if Matt Powell will say it, but I'm going to make a prediction here that he will say something to the effect of, I don't believe on faith, right? Like, I know, right? Like, I know that these things are true. So he'll, like, the idea of, like, believing on faith is I think in his worldview bad, right?
Yeah, I think that might be accurate. Yeah.
Right. And so, like, because his religious views are rooted in a certainty of the truth, right? And you hear this a lot of the truth of the Bible, and you hear this a lot in young Earth creationist circles, right? Of, like, well, we don't have to believe on faith because we know, right? And it's this presenting a picture of certainty around their beliefs, right? Which, one, wild take, right? Wild take on religion, if you ask me, right?
Yeah.
And so I anyway, so, like, I just wanted to point out that that's kind of he has this weird worldview that his religious views are better than everyone else's because his don't depend on faith, right? That is, like, that's in his belief system. I'm trying to be a Matt translator, and I probably need more beer to make that happen. So.
Well, there's a good news, because we are about to take a quick break so that you can get more beer. I can get a fresh bottle of soju.
Amazing!
And, yeah, in the meantime, everybody, hopefully you guys can hear the musical stylings of one Benthoven, who is unfortunately under the weather, which also means if you're someone who enjoys us watching Power Rangers after the show, probably not going to do that. Instead, what I'm probably going to do is try to record audio tonight for a new video. So there you go.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, here is Benthoven's music, and we will be right back in just a few minutes. And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us. Those of you who did, which looks like pretty much everyone, I do appreciate that. Now that we're back, real quick, I do want to say that this channel, especially these streams, are entirely supported by you guys. Your donations via super chats, super stickers, super thanks, gifting memberships, all that stuff is really vitally important to keeping this channel going. And I want to be able to do this indefinitely, and you guys are making that a plausible thing that could happen. I'm not currently in danger of shutting down in the foreseeable future, so that is amazing. If you're currently not supporting financially, but that's something that you're interested in, and you can afford it, it shouldn't be coming out of rent or food money or the stuff you spend to like get your kids clothes or something. I don't know, none of those. It's like an entertainment budget expense. But if you can afford it and you are interested, there's a bunch of great ways. There's the Patreon and the channel memberships. Both those get you access to the special supporters-only Discord. They both get you access to my scripted videos. At this point, I think I'm like past 6 months ahead. So there's just so much. Like I just released one, I think last week. I'm hoping to release another one like tomorrow. And then hopefully another one by like the end of this week. Like there's a lot of stuff coming. It gets you early access to that. On the Patreon, it starts at only $1 a month. You can get a 15% discount if you go annual. The membership starts at $1.99 a month. You can also get access to once-a-month membership milestone chats, as well as the channel emojis. And if a monthly or annual thing isn't your deal, there's a number of other ways. Both Bent and myself have wish lists linked in the description for Amazon. There's a merch store under this. There is also just liking and sharing these videos and watching them all the way through, maybe watching a few in a row, really helps a lot. So please make sure you do that. So there you go. And I think Maddie had something she wanted to add as context for why we do this, why it's important to have these kinds of streams as a thing that's available.
Yeah. So as a lot of you guys know, I live in the state of Oklahoma. But what you might not know is that our current state superintendent, Ryan Walters, listen, even people in our state hate him. Like, but he is very much trying to, in my opinion, I think he's trying to use the education system in Oklahoma as a proving ground for the education policies laid out in Project 2025, right? And so I got my hands, so recently, a few months ago, he put out a mandate, right, that all classrooms starting in, I think, fifth grade and up in public schools shall have a Bible in the classroom, and lessons shall come from the Bible, or on threat of losing teacher license, right? This is being challenged, right? A lot of school districts are standing up to him and refuse to do so, but a lot aren't, right? And so like, hey, we're working on cleaning our own house, right? But I think I got my hands on today a assignment that was given to students at a high school out here in their world history class. Now, I will say that my source for this is a Facebook group that's for education advocacy in the state of Oklahoma, right? So I haven't like tracked down the poster and confirmed everything with them. But with that, I would like to read you guys these real questions given to a public school freshman in high school in Oklahoma, right? That is real to the best of my knowledge. Okay. The assignment is called, How Did the World Start? Answer the following questions, but you must provide a source using APA style supporting your answer. Question 1, how did the world start? Question 2, who started it? Question 3, when did evil start, or did it always exist? Question 4, are people inherently good or evil, or neither? 5, what is morality? 6, what is religion? 7, what is Christianity? 8, what does it mean to be a Christian? 9, is God real? 10, is Satan real?
Yikes.
So that's 1, obviously looking for young earth creationist answers. 2, I'm mad at this on two levels. One, this is inappropriate, like, for a world history class. You could have a class on, like, world religions or a world religions section of, like, a class and answer questions like, hey, compare and contrast the definitions of, like, deity in 3 different religions, right? Like, cool, you know, or the concept of deity. That's a question, right?
Heck, even what is Christianity, as long as it's paired with what is, and then you list other religions, that could be a reasonable question. But clearly that's not what's going on here.
That's clearly not what's going on. And so I just want to point out, one of the reasons that we do these streams is to bring awareness to the fact that young earth creationism exists, right? And I know a lot of people view it as a fringe theory, but it's getting young earth creationism taught in public schools is a goal in the Project 2025, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we do these streams. They're fun. I love hanging out with you guys and having a few drinks and laughs, right? And this is a little bit of laughing to keep from crying, right? Because I value education. I think it's really important, and bullshit like this does not belong. And frankly, these are ill-formed questions to begin with, right? These would be bad questions in a Bible class, right, at a private Christian school. They're really bad in the context of a public school. And for example, the person who posted this, just so everybody knows, is actually a Native American student, who is not herself Christian, right? Anyway, so that's my little PSA and awareness thing for tonight.
We got a few things to read. C Design Proponents says, for 200 Argentine pesos, I'll be damned if I let a yank tell me to be financially irresponsible. I mean, yeah, fair enough. Rana, Unwelcome Nuance K, with what is allegedly their 3rd super chat, says, get well soon, Bent. Yes, I hope Bent does get well soon. Yeah, like, if he's not better tomorrow, there's a fair chance that, I'm bringing him to the doctor, which basically just means I'm bringing him to the VA hospital. So, that'll...
Oof. Yeah. Sorry.
Roshna Autocatalytic Keller for $4.99 says, a local news channel in Oklahoma confirmed that this world history assignment was real, which, yeah, that's kind of horrifying. I'm going to hit play, and somehow that will make it less horrifying for me. I think maybe. No, it probably won't.
But here's the thing. Matter cannot be created or destroyed.
That's...
No!
Nope.
That is not true!
Take a drink.
Take a drink. Energy!
Yep.
First law of physics.
It's the first law of physics, Maddie!
Ew. What is the law of... Ew!
It's the first law of physics!
It's the first law of physics. What's the second law of physics?
Obviously, that everything always goes downhill.
Are you in the room with us now? Like,
Maddie, the second law of physics is always that everything gets worse and goes downhill. That's the second law of physics. I'm taking another drink for the first law of physics. Jeez.
Dude, I am finishing this beer for that.
That's fair.
And so if at one point, and all scientists agree, that at one point there was no matter, there was no time, no space, no matter, no nothing, and then...
No. You're forgetting the energy. All the energy was there. Although, the net sum of energy in the universe might actually be 0, in which case you could argue that there was no energy. Strawberry, 5th Super Chat vein, who's been a member for 15 months, and is at the diapsid level, which is very generous. Thank you so much. Says, there may not be a large percentage of the population that are young Earth creationists, but they are disproportionately rich, powerful, and insane, and that is accurate. Yeah. Now, your average young Earther isn't those things, but there are they vote for people who are those things. Yeah. And they'll give what money they have to people who are those things. You can remember, like, the funding for the Ark Encounter didn't primarily come from, like, billionaires. It came from a bunch of, like, people that just go to church that happen to be young Earth creationist churches saying, yeah, sure, I'll chip in my $5, $10, $100 here and there to Answers in Genesis to help them build a giant building in the rough shape of a wooden boat.
Listen.
Reasons.
Churches are very good at crowdsourcing.
They really are. They're like the GoFundMe from before GoFundMe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sean for $10 says, I came on just in time for a new law of physics. How fun with the Godzilla. We'll take a drink for the Godzilla.
Fresh beer. I smashed this one in rage.
I saw that. All right, here we go.
Bang out of nothing, the Big Bang, everything comes into being. But that violates the first law of thermodynamics.
Oh, now it's the first law of thermodynamics, which, no, it doesn't. But at least this time you didn't say it's the first law of physics.
Right, at least, okay, so what you think the first law of thermodynamics is not, what you said is not what that is, right?
Right.
Colloquially, you can say the first law of thermodynamics is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. There's a more formal definition than that, but that's a good understanding, right? So that's not what he said, but also the first law of physics is not a thing. He made that series of words into a phrase. He made that up. That's not a thing. So at least this time he said a thing, even if he then incorrectly defined it.
Right, he's got slightly less wrong, but only slightly.
Yeah.
Matthew K just joined the channel at the tetrapod level. Thank you so much.
Welcome, friends.
I hope you enjoy all of the fun, fancy new emojis. And remember, if you suddenly have access to my Discord server, the way to get access to it is to go to your Discord, go to settings, go to connections, add the account that is allowing you to have access to my Discord server, and then in my Discord server will appear below that on a list of servers that you now have access to. Join it that way. The wrong way is to try to get me to send you an invite, because I do not send those out. That is not a thing. There are no invites to that server. Meldeborn, who's been a member for 23 months, says, I have yet to listen to a young Earth creationist who comprehends thermodynamics to the point that they can understand that the laws of thermodynamics offer no rebuttal to the theory of evolution. Sal Cordova, my channel has a video in which I and Sal Cordova sit down and talk about thermodynamics, and he takes the entirely mainstream view that thermodynamics is in no way a problem for evolution. He's still a young Earth creationist, but he just thinks that arguments based on the second law of thermodynamics are wrong and silly. So there's at least one out there, and it's Sal. So good job, Sal.
Good job. Yeah.
I've heard other people question his knowledge of thermodynamics broadly, but I mean, if we're grading on the curve of young Earth creationists, then even if they're right, he still is way better at thermodynamics than any other creationist that I know of. So, I mean, yeah. All right, here we go.
What is that? Matter cannot be created or destroyed. So logically, it's more plausible to believe, okay, something outside of the laws of physics. Obviously, if you have a law, you have to have a lawgiver. Somebody.
Take a drink for if you have a law. You have to have a lawgiver.
Are you confusing legal codes?
Yes.
With observations about unchanging things in the physical world?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's dumb.
It's extremely dumb. So yeah, for those of you who might not be familiar with scientific laws are statements that express, as far as we can tell, unchanging relationships between different aspects of reality. So for instance, in Ohm's law, right, where you create a relationship between resistance, current, and voltage, that is just a mathematical description of what happens in simple circuits in electrical, applications. No one came up with that as an arbitrary rule that they wrote down and then demanded that electrons and ions follow. Like, that's not how it happened.
Punish the ions for not complying.
Right, like, oh, I see you, sodium ion, going to the wrong part of this circuit. Bad. You're going to ion prison. Yeah, that's not how.
Ion prison.
It's not how it works, right? Similarly, the law of gravity is just the mathematical relationship that explains the acceleration of different masses under the influence of gravity. It wasn't something that Newton was like, now, you know what would be really cool? Gravity. I'm going to write that down and then force all matter in the universe to obey it. That's not what's happening. A piece of legislation, right? That is a thing that some people or person comes up with and then punishes people for not following. Those kind of laws do require lawgivers of some kind or another. Scientific laws...
I was going to say... Continue. Finish your point, because I have a joke to make.
Scientific laws don't have lawgivers. They have discoverers and describers. It's a very different process.
Unless we're on Exandria, and gravity works the way Matt Mercer says it works. Because, here's the thing, I did the math, and the gravity of Exandria be roughly a third what it is on Earth, and that would actually mean that Exandria can't have an atmosphere. But Exandria does have an atmosphere, and nobody is just bouncing, flouncing away. So, and canonically, it has a magical stone that, like, affects gravity. So I think the core of the planet Exandria is made of this fantasy magical stone, right? That is magically affecting the gravity on Exandria. I spent more time than I care to admit doing the math of that.
So is Exandria about the size of Mars?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's roughly a third the size of Earth. By the way, but it does still have, it spins fast enough that it does still have 3 main convecting cells, like the Earth does in its atmosphere. So it should have these like broad regions of like it has tropics, it has desert regions, right? It has the poles that are cold.
But it's just tiny.
Yeah, it's just smaller. So like the weather roughly works out, except over in the continent Marquette is on.
Yeah, but Maddie, a wizard did that, so don't worry about it.
But a wizard did that, so we don't have to worry about it. That's actually true, right? A wizard did that. So it's a magical desert. So any of the problems I have with the weather and like atmospheric circulation and gravity on Exandria are fully explained by wizards.
Right. Also,
and in fact, canonically explained by wizards.
Well, there you go. The Lack of Leon Kennedy says ions go to Prizion. Yes.
Oh, okay, I have a really bad joke. How can you tell, how do you tell the difference between an electrician and a physicist?
I don't know. How?
Have them pronounce the word Unionize.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of the laws of physics, would have had to bring the laws of physics into being and bring matter itself into being.
Matt, you're
No. I'm drinking.
Yeah, we'll take a drink. Here's the thing. You need to actually establish that there are no other options before you can say that that is a requirement of logic, right? We don't actually know how to assess the cause of the reason that like physics works the way it does. It's not clear what that could even be. And sure, I guess maybe you can propose an omnipotent creator. I mean, you can, obviously. But
you can.
You proposing it isn't evidence that it's true. And people not assuming that it's true doesn't make them illogical for doing that, because we don't know if there are other ways that physics can come about. And Vishanti, of course, points out...
We observe matter to be created and destroyed all day, every day.
Yeah.
Right?
Sunlight is a result of the destruction of matter.
Right. But we don't even need sunlight to prove this, right? Like, you can go to, like, the Large Hadron Collider and, like, watch it happen.
I feel like most people see a lot more sunlight than they do the results of the Large Hadron Collider, but what do I know?
But I mean, like, you see sunlight and that doesn't... I mean, Matt sees sunlight and it's on...
Right? Yeah, he does think it's a fire.
We're not presupposing that matter is being created and destroyed. No, we, like, take the thing that started and measure it and know its properties, and we take the thing that ends and we measure it and we know its properties, and they're different, and matter is missing.
Or
right?
Gained.
Like, or gained. Yeah, exactly. Or gained, right? Like, these are processes we objectively know occur. These are not theories. These are measured, repeatable, in the lab processes.
Yes. Also, Vishanti points out cation. You know about the cation?
No.
So this was a debate with a flat earther that Michael Toon or MC Toon had. And this guy was trying to argue that for one, he was trying to argue that Antarctica was made of salt, which
cool.
It's not, but sure,
it's
whatever. And apparently, for some reason, he thought that it being made of salt would mean that the Earth is flat. I'm not sure how that connects either. But he quoted a paper talking about the salt on Antarctica that had the word cation, and he pronounced it cation. And then when Toon corrected him on this, he doubled down on it being Cation.
Sweetie, no.
Yeah, and also on top of that, he didn't just mispronounce it. When he was asked to define what that was, he couldn't. He didn't even know that it was a positive ion. Yeah, so like, not only did he get the pronunciation of cation wrong, which to be fair, it's a weird word, right?
It's a weird word. And like, no shade on mispronouncing that if you've only ever read it, right? Like, seriously, no shade.
But then you get corrected and you double down and you don't even know what it is. Also, he pronounced anion, anion. Like it's an onion, but with an A. And it's just like, oh no.
And here, by the way, here's the thing that blows my mind is chemistry is a required course in most high schools in the United States. So
people drop out of high school.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
True.
You can't assume people have gone through high school. Joshua Gates gifted 10 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, so let's take 10 drinks. Here we go.
Thank
1.
God.
No. Thank Joshua. 2.
Thank Joshua.
3.
2.
4. 5. Give me a second. Okay, 6.
I'm gonna burp.
7.
No, I held it in. Okay.
Nice. 8. 9. And 10. I might have to get another one.
Nice. By the way, if anyone, my current fidget that I'm playing with are these bone Halloween decorations I have cut apart for part of a costume.
Nice.
But I keep throwing them like that, and I do feel like I am going to divine the future, and I feel very powerful. Thank you.
Okay. Well, tell us, is Matt Powell ever going to figure it out?
Figure out what?
World, life, basic knowledge that humans normally just have by the age of 10?
No, but he could if he took me up on my real offer, right, of funding some continuing education classes for him.
Yeah.
My only rule, one, I really want you to take a rhetoric class, right? Just please take a rhetoric class at an accredited university. It can be a Christian university. Don't care. Accreditation is all I care about.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it would be nice.
That's a real offer.
Matt, you could get free education from an actual university.
Please to do so.
Do I hit play?
Yes.
Because natural causes can't bring about themselves. These are scientific.
You haven't established that at all. You just said that. That's just an assertion.
Citation needed.
Yeah.
Prove it.
In fact, we have the citation needed video. Citation needed, Matt.
Also, I know we haven't heard from the host, Matthias, but I feel like Matthias is another bonus Matt.
Yeah, we keep getting bonus Matts. What's up with that?
We do keep getting bonus Matts.
You know, I was thinking that maybe next time we do a Matt McLean video because I am a little tired of Matt Powell and Raw Matt. Matt McLean is by far the superior of those.
Matt McLean is the superior Matt. Yeah. I have a lot more empathy for Matt McLean.
Yeah, I mean, he knows some things. Like, he's not just a total moron.
Yeah, and let me be very clear, if he realizes the position he's in, right, he should realize that he's been completely screwed over, right, and is dedicated the time it takes to get a PhD, right, which is, listen.
It's like a decade of your life.
It's like a decade of your life. He's devoted that to a PhD that is worthless outside of young Earth creationist circles, right?
Which basically just means,
which he may have not realized, right? Like, if he was going to realize that, realizing that in the middle of his PhD is a reasonable time, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if he realizes the position he's in, right, he's like, can you imagine having gotten a PhD? Oh my God, sorry, me thinking about having gotten my PhD and then realized it's worthless, right?
Yep.
And would have to start over. Makes me want to puke. At
least
and I wouldn't, frankly.
Matt Powell didn't do that.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Facts that we observe. Science has to be demonstratable, testable, and provable. Otherwise, it's
No, science is never provable. But demonstrable and testable, yes. So
sure, yeah.
You know what? I'll give you like 2/3 of a drink, Matt. Because
listen, that's almost a passing grade.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a 67%.
Yeah, I mean it's an F, but it's a high F.
I mean, in some places that's a D.
Maybe I should have gone. No, I was gonna say maybe I should have gone to school in those places, and I realized I never got close to a 67. What are you talking about?
D's get degrees.
That's true. You know what they call the guy who had the lowest scores in his graduating class at medical school?
Lieutenant?
Well, yeah, but more specifically, doctor. Doctor. They call him doctor. Yeah.
Doctor.
But yes, they also call him lieutenant. Or
my sister would be really mad at me for making joke.
Maddie's cut out almost entirely.
Oh no! Am I back?
Yep.
Okay. I was gonna say, my sister would be really mad at me for making that bad of a military joke because, like, Navy just paid for med school for her, right? That's how most people who end up as doctors in the military make that choice, like senior year of college, because they don't have the financial resources and don't want to go $500,000 into debt.
Yeah, I mean,
get a medical degree.
You know, though, if you join under certain specialties that the military really needs, you can start off as like an 06.
That's true.
Yeah.
I went to ODS with a guy that got to start as an 05 because he was an oral surgeon.
Yeah, I think it was cardiologist, at least when I was in, who could just start out at like an 06. You get that little bird on your collar if you're a cardiologist and you join.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, it turns out cardiologists can make a lot of money outside of the military. So in order to get someone to actually join the military as a cardiologist, you got to offer them a similar amount of money. So
that's true.
They start out just skipping a whole bunch of ranks.
They just, yeah.
Yeah, of course, the other thing is, though, everyone knows that, like, if you're a doctor, you got at least a good chunk of those ranks just handed to you. And so it's like, yeah, you're a captain, but you're kind of a captain.
Yeah, well, and I will say that, like, so doctors get to start at 03. And if a doctor starts at 03, like, that doesn't bother me because the promotions up to 03 are automatic unless you, like, commit murder.
Basically.
They have to withhold your promotion. Right? Otherwise, it happens automatically. But listen, if you're in the look for the if you want your military medicine person who has like military clout, just look for the FMF pen. Right?
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna hit play on this.
Yeah.
And so when these guys are saying, look, spontaneous generation must be true, or just stupid things like, okay.
No one is saying that, Matt.
No one's saying that. Who's saying that?
Who's saying Ernest that? Ernest Haeckel is saying that. Ernest Haeckel.
Is Ernest Haeckel in the room with us now?
At one point, there was nothing, which I agree. And then bang, out of nothing, everything comes into being. How is that scientific? That violates the very first law of physics. So
he said it again.
you went backwards. Yourself.
Come on, Matt.
I would have given you it as a misspeak. Come on.
I'm taking that drink. Which, again, no, it doesn't, Matt, because you don't understand the laws of thermodynamics, fundamentally. It's energy. So, it's actually more complicated, right? The total amount of energy is always a conserved amount. But that doesn't mean... which the universe presumably is.
Yes.
So, but what that means, though, Matt, is if you have a new... energy can spontaneously come about as long as the sum of the energy, after you do the vector math, because energy is a vector, after you do that vector math, as long as the sum stays the same, you can have a whole bunch of new energy just pop out of nowhere. That's fine. It doesn't violate a single law of physics. It happens all the time. But because the total sum is still 0, or whatever it was earlier, that's fine. Roshan Autocatalytic Color for 199 says, what's it take to get OT8 in the military? Well, I don't think the OT8 expansion pack has been released yet. So
yeah.
I love that Scientology is like they're literally waiting on the new expansion pack to drop. And the devs are just like, don't worry, it's right around the corner. And they've been saying that for like 30 years. Oh, Scientology. You are
Scientology.
It's an interesting thing. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Matt, listen. Matt Powell. Hi. Like, meet me here in the camera. Hi. Go to ocw.mit.edu, right? And then I want you to look up either 5.60 or 3.020, right? These are both undergraduate chemistry courses in thermodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 3020 would be best. That's just thermodynamics of materials, right? And it's free.
Yeah.
It's
MIT
free.
has all their course
whole
stuff.
Class. MIT has all of their courses online for free. Please learn what thermodynamics is. And listen, if you need to start with basic physics, great. 801, 802, start there. Take take 3091. Go on here and do 3091. That's physics and chemistry of that is a chemistry class, but it's taught by the material science department. And it's a great intro to chemistry course. Please take that.
Mm-hmm.
It's free. Please learn what thermodynamics for all of us.
So Max P has an interesting comment. What about the expansion of space? Doesn't that violate conservation? The answer to that is
no.
Yeah, the answer to that is it seems to, but it probably doesn't.
So here's the issue, right? Is that what is really, 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 really hard to wrap your brain around, right? Is that the universe is expanding. True. The universe is not expanding into anything, right? So, like, if you're picturing, we often describe the universe expanding as, like, imagine you're blowing up a balloon, right? That's kind of a great little visual. But when you blow up a balloon, the balloon is expanding into the air around it.
Hey, Maddie, while you give this, I'm going to grab myself another bottle of soju because apparently I still need another one. So you keep going with that. I'll be right back.
Another one for today.
Yeah, you be right back. I'll be right back.
But when we talk about the universe expanding, it is not expanding into something, right? It is all of the somethings that exist, right, are moving further apart. And in that sense, the universe is expanding, right? But there is nothing beyond the universe, right? There is no space or time or anything beyond their universe. There is nothing beyond. And so as the universe expands, right, space is created as the universe expands. So what was there before? Nothing. There was nothing before the universe expanded into it, almost like definitionally. And is that really trippy? Yes. It's really, really trippy, but it's asking, like, what is the universe expanding into is the same type of question as asking, well, what was time before the Big Bang, right? Or what was going on before the Big Bang? It's a silly question. It's like, what is a married bachelor, right? It is a question that is logically impossible in its premise. And so the universe expanding isn't violating any rules, right? The reason it's hard to think of it like that is if the universe was expanding into things, then we'd be running into some problems, right? Like with laws of physics. But it's not. It's expanding, and there wasn't anything there before it got there. I hope that makes sense, right? Or I hope you want to, like, if you're partaking this evening, take a couple drinks, sit with that for a minute. What a great thing to ponder at, like, midnight over a campfire with buddies.
Yeah.
Right?
And also, maybe after the stream, go binge a whole bunch of PBS Spacetime.
Ooh, yeah.
There you go. All right. Here we go.
Right off the bat, the atheists already have a huge problem, and they already have a huge gap in their theory.
Okay.
Do we?
First of all,
also,
atheist is the wrong way to describe this. This is physicists.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing. Physicists don't have to be atheists, and atheists don't have to know anything in particular about physics. These are not the same thing, right? Now, I will grant you, many physicists are atheists, but it is far from all. And many non-atheists know a thing or two about physics.
Also, many physicists are not atheists, right? That is also
also the case. Yeah. I would, as far as I know, atheists are overrepresented among physicists. But it is certainly not even close to like a universal thing.
Or a majority.
I don't know about that. So I would have to look at demographics. You might be
am pretty confident in my answer on that. I do think atheists are overrepresented. Like, I'm pretty sure that is true. But like the atheism in the general population is like in the single digit percentages, right?
That is low.
Right? I'm pretty sure.
Ian Wing asks if I'm getting shill checks from PBS now. I wish. Hey, Matt O'Dowd, if you want to send me money, I will absolutely take it.
Dude, I'll show PBS all day long.
All right, here we go.
They have no basis. And yet they claim to be so logical. That's why I love what the Bible says. The Bible says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools.
Matt, you were the guy who thinks that space has air in it because the sun needs oxygen to burn.
I'm not gonna lie, I really want to reply here. Nuh-uh, you.
Exactly. Like you.
And it's just that we got on to Matt for using that argument earlier, so I don't.
The big difference is though that like he's very obviously being a hypocrite because he very, very obviously doesn't know what he's talking about when he says virtually anything, including about the Bible. Matt is worse about the Bible than virtually anyone I've ever met who claims to have read it.
Okay,
right? Yeah. Like, yeah. I've met people who will say, like, oh, no, I've never read the Bible, I have no idea what's in there. You know what? Hey, fair enough. Matt is not in that camp. Matt says that he's read the Bible and he knows what's in it. That's a big difference.
And I guess you and I consistently know more about the Bible than he does, and we should not, right? Like, preaching is arguably his profession, right?
Certainly what he spends a lot of time doing. It's at the very least a very important hobby.
Is not my profession, right? I don't spend much time thinking about the Bible, right?
Crypto457 points out, and he said that squids and octopus are natural enemies. Yes, he did say that. I missed a super chat about aerodynamics. Savage Dreadnought Armored Schooner Cobra for $4.99 says, first commandment of aerodynamics, maintain thine airspeed, lest the ground rise up and smite thee. Excellent.
Excellent. I love this.
All right, I'm just gonna hit play.
You know, they put on the glasses a certain way and try to make themselves look wise. But the Bible refers to them.
Excuse me, I wear glasses because I am blind. Because I cannot see without them. Jeez.
Yeah, is this just ableist body shaming? Is that what's happening right now? Seems like it.
Maybe. And contacts make my eyes itchy.
Yeah, contacts are the worst.
Reason being is because they deny the first and second law of thermodynamics.
What are those?
Matt doesn't know. And second, the Big Bang doesn't defy either of those. They only defy those if you don't know what the first and second law of thermodynamics actually talk about. So let's take a drink for that one.
God.
And realistically, they deny all of science.
Dude, you believe the Earth is 6,000 years old and that all creatures were created simultaneously, roughly, within a 2-day span, 6,000 years ago. Yeah. And all live together.
Tell that to my meteorology degrees. Like,
for that to be true, virtually all of particle physics would have to be wrong. All of geology, most of classical physics, all of relativity would have to be wrong. It's honestly easier to like. Actually, I can't think of a single aspect or a single branch of science that wouldn't have to be rejected almost entirely for young Earth creationism to be true.
Actually, you're totally right. I was thinking about could meteorology be, not with the flood of Noah.
Yeah, no, the flood of Noah absolutely is impossible meteorologically, as depicted by young Earth creationists.
Yes.
Now, could there have been a global flood in line with meteorology? I guess if we just assumed lots of extra water being around for some reason, like, I don't know.
Well, okay. Let's erode a bunch of continents.
I mean, that becomes impossible from a geology standpoint, but from a meteorology standpoint, I guess it's fine.
From a meteorology standpoint,
yeah.
Listen, from a meteorology standpoint, I don't care what the ocean level is, but it cannot rain everywhere on planet Earth all at once. That's impossible.
Yeah, this isn't Ferenginar.
It's not Ferenginar.
Which also can't rain everywhere all at once, because where does the water come from?
Because it has to be, you have to have upwelling somewhere to have downwelling elsewhere. Like, come on.
Maddie, you know what? At some point, we need to get together and figure out how Ferenginar's weather works.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it does.
Does it rain everywhere all?
So, Ferenginar has never been shown in a situation where a inhabited region isn't raining. Now, okay. But the thing is, though, that could just mean that for some biological reason, the Ferengi prefer the most humid parts of their planet, and they build in what is essentially like the wettest areas of the planet. So
yeah.
It could be that, right? Like maybe they just really hate the deserts.
Mm. Well, or you could have a planet where there is no land where you would have deserts, right? Like that's possible.
Okay.
Okay, I have theories. I think I can figure out Ferenginar.
All right. Figure it out before I start my... Oh, I just made a horrible, horrible mistake. Dapper's a professional.
Is Dapper a professional?
Dapper is a professional.
Amazing.
I'll take a drink for it.
Cheers, team.
I may have made a decimal point error.
Does it have to stop raining sometime?
Rocha Autocatalytic Killer for $9.99 says, I don't even understand why young Earth creationists bring up the laws of thermodynamics. They only apply to isolated systems, and since God is in all things, there's no such thing as an isolated system. I mean, yeah, look, it doesn't actually make sense.
It doesn't make sense, but it's because someone once described entropy as the amount of chaos in a system.
Which is a dumb way to put it.
Which is a really dumb way of putting it. Here's my definition of entropy, right? This is, and I teach this, right? I've taught this to people, and this is how I teach it. Entropy is just the amount of energy in a system that we can't use to do work, that we can't use to move stuff.
Yeah, that's probably the best classical definition for entropy.
Yeah. So it is the friction, that heat from friction generated between your car's tire and the road, right? It is, again, the friction from the pistons in your engine firing. Your engine is not 100% efficient, right? And so if your engine is 70% efficient, right, which would be amazing, right, then 30% of the energy generated by your engine is entropy.
Mm-hmm.
Energy not available to do work. That's it. It's not more complicated.
Savage Dreadnought Armored Schooner Cobra for $4.99 says, on Ferenginar, being dry is just behind a paywall. Actually, that is sometimes true, because I do believe you do have to pay to use towels. So,
amazing.
Actually, watch Lower Decks and watch the episode where they go to Ferenginar after the Ferengi Alliance joins the Federation, because the Lower Deckers are sent to go do research for the travel guide to Ferenginar, because apparently all Federation planets get an official travel guide made. And so Brad is got this whole itinerary of he's going to visit like all the restaurants and all the tourist attractions, the museums, the casinos, and he's got this like allowance of a whole bunch of Latinum that the Federation has given him. And what he actually ends up doing is staying up the entire time in his hotel room watching Ferengi TV. Because it's fascinating, and also, he's never heard of a commercial before, and so he doesn't even know what they are. And he's just completely immersed in this idea of, like, commercials, and, like, there's a show about cop landlords going around collecting rent with guns, and, like, he's just completely absorbed in this. It's a great episode.
It's a great episode.
It does a bunch of like really fun Ferengi world building. I like the bit where two of the characters are on like the romantic newlywed package tour, and it turns out that lying on your forms about being newlyweds is like a crime. It's like a severe crime, like because you've lied about a contract, and so they're like, oh no, this is bad. So wonderful episode. Go watch it.
It's so good.
Yeah, one quote I heard the other day about atheism is two things. Number one, there is no God, and number two,
yes, that is kind of the point of atheism.
Yep.
I hate them.
I mean, I'm not going to say that some... Look, here's the thing, right? You can hate things that you don't believe in as characters, right? Like, you can hate the villain of a book. Similarly, if you don't believe in God, that doesn't mean that you can't hate the characterization of that character that you think doesn't exist, but as he's portrayed in works in which he appears.
Yeah, like, I don't think Satan, the devil, exists, right? I don't think that's a real person. I can acknowledge he's the bad guy universally, right? Like,
yeah, if he existed, the thing said about him were true, he'd probably be a bit of a dick.
He'd be bad guy. I wouldn't like him.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
You can also hate the things that people do on behalf of things that you don't believe exist. There's another thing there.
That's true.
So if people are saying, the reason I'm doing this horrible thing to you is because God told me to, I get to hate that concept.
That God sucks. Right. Yeah.
You can't tell me I'm not allowed to hate that concept because I don't think it has a real referent. I still get to hate the idea.
Yeah. We, in fact, can hate things that aren't real.
Yeah. It's perfectly fine.
Have they read fiction? Like, do they like Voldemort?
I don't know. Actually, that does remind me. I've come across this discourse about, like, why are we boycotting or being super critical of J.K. Rowling for all of her bigoted views when the same people are willing to just go read Lovecraft? And it's like, okay, here's the big difference. One author is a multimillionaire who is using her money to spread a message of hatred and intolerance. The other one is a dead racist who can't do a damn thing to spread racism. That's why. Yeah. That's why I have absolutely no qualms about playing Call of Cthulhu, the role-playing game, picking up my like complete works of H.P. Lovecraft, and recognizing that, like most literature from the early 20th or late 19th century, there's a whole bunch of racism in there, but there are still also fun ideas about cosmic horror and the insignificance of humanity in an uncaring universe. That's not racist.
That's not. I picked up a book from Barnes & Noble that was like a book of fairy tales, right? It's like called The Blue Book of Fairy Tales. And I was like, oh, this will be so much fun. I can read Small Child. By the way, I'm trying to, I know I've said her name on camera before, but I'm trying to not do that anymore. And so if I like pause and correct myself to say Small Child or something like that.
Yeah, I get it.
I was like, that'll be so much fun. We can read all these like classic fairy tales and stuff like that. And before she was even born, I was reading a few to myself, and I was like, oh no, some of these are very anti-Semitic. And so I was like, ooh, we'll put this on a shelf and can read those later and have a discussion about anti-Semitism. So
yeah.
But like me purchasing that book gave no one money except whoever owns Barnes & Noble, right? And possibly the translator, right? Who is not a
prominent bigot, right? Yeah, not a prominent bigot with a platform spreading bigotry. Yeah, that's the difference. Yeah, like I recognize that basically all work from the like 20s, the 1920s, is going to be pretty damn racist. But guess what?
Right.
There aren't a whole bunch of people actually spreading racism as a result of getting money from me purchasing books that contain those stories. But we do have to start wrapping up because we are getting to the point where we've been going for about 2 hours. So
and we made it 4 minutes and 8 seconds in. Oh my god. Oh,
hey,
no.
There's only an hour and 1 minute and 22 seconds left.
Okay, so if that's at 2 hours, 4 minutes, or an hour for every 2 minutes, we're going to be here until the heat death of the universe.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to Matt Powell hell.
Good God.
We're going to be here forever. But only once a month.
Wait, does that thing on his computer say talkin' Dutrin?
I think it's doctrine. I think the second thing that you're seeing as an O is a C.
I mean, I get that it's supposed to be.
No, it is, because look, the O attaches at the top and the C goes into the T at the bottom.
Doot! I'm going to call it Dutrin.
That's fair. All right, so, Maddie, do you have anything you want to announce as to what's coming up soon on your channel?
Not on my channel, but tomorrow night, I'm going to be on Creationist with Dr. Dan. Nice. Same bat time, different bat channel. So still starting at, that'll be 8 p.m. my time, Central Time. So 9 Eastern. The same time this started.
6 Pacific.
I will be on.
Yeah.
I'll be on his channel.
Okay. So let's take a look at what's
talking about carbon dating.
Awesome. So what's coming up on this channel is on Thursday. Sorry, I am premiering VHS Pseudoscience, which is a riff on the VHS franchise, which is a fun franchise of horror anthologies with a little shelled framing device about haunted or cursed VHS tapes. Doesn't matter. Anyway, that'll be the 5th and final episode about Sabor Ahmad and the Muslim Lanterns live stream about evolution. Then on Saturday, I'm going to be continuing the video of Pete Greer talking about human evolution. I think we're actually going to get to human evolution this time, so that'll be nice. Last time we didn't really. I think Vishanti will be back. I am not 100% positive, but I think she'll be back. Let's see. Then next Tuesday, I will be seeing if Jackson Wheat is available for Jackson with Jackson. But it might end up being a Dapper Reacts if he can't be here for Tuesday, in which case we would push Jackson with Jackson to a different day. So there will be something on Tuesday. I'm just not 100% sure what it's going to be. But then the next Thursday, the Pam Acker Catholic Young Earth Creationist, the movie is coming. And that's a long one. That's going to be, I think it's like 4 hours or something. So like bring snacks. Okay, Strawberry 5th Super Chat Bane for $2 says, their fifth Super Chat once again, says, welcome to hell, but only once a month. Uterus. Which, not inaccurate. Not inaccurate. That's what you get for not getting pregnant. You know, just get pregnant. Solve that problem right up there. For the better part of a year. There you go. I mean, it'll create different problems, but,
what could go wrong?
Vishanti says,
I see zero downsides.
Yeah. Vishanti says, we'll join if I can get good progress on my cosplay. Well, get good progress on your cosplay. Come on, let's go. Chop, chop. And the ad frequency on
like I do.
The ad frequency dropped off as the stream went on. Well, that's good. All right, so that's what's coming up next week, and then a little bit farther than next week. We are not, as I said, going to do any Power Rangers over on the Discord because Benthoven isn't joining us today. I don't even know if he's getting out of bed again for the rest of the day. So I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. I will see all of you hopefully on Thursday for the final video in the Sabor Ahmad Muslim Lantern, whatever it is, series. It's been terrible. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope that you all are doing great, and we're going to get out of here. End credits. Bye. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovand, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Ella Runteller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostock Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Wallace, John Ackerman, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.